Good morning, good evening, good afternoon. Welcome to the AI Argument with me, Justin Collery, and Frank Prendergast. This has been one of the most consequential weeks in AI that I've come across. But before we start with that, because I know there's a number of things you want to discuss, Frank, I just want to talk to you a little bit about Claude and the Golden Gate Bridge. So Claude has become obsessed with the Golden Gate Bridge, or at least the Golden Gate version of Claude. And now they put up a special. They did this as a part of a research project, which was part of AI safety. It's a really good piece of research, but it's become obsessed. So now people are asking the questions like, "I've had a baby girl. What should I call the baby girl?" And Claude comes back, "Why don't you call it Claude? Why did you call it the Golden Gate Bridge? That's a beautiful name for a girl. Fantastic." Or people are saying, "Oh, I'm feeling really depressed. What should I do about it?" And Claude is very empathic anyway, so it says, "Oh, I'm sorry to hear that you're so depressed. It can be hard sometimes getting through life. Thomas so-and-so, who was the designer for the Golden Gate Bridge, felt that way in 1937, but he worked through it by designing the Golden Gate Bridge." It's been fantastic. So I feel good that we're well on the way to controlling our new AI overlords. How's your week been, Frank?
It's been pretty good. It's been pretty good. Yeah, I wasn't actually aware of this Golden Gate Bridge obsession, but I was aware of the paper that they released, which is interesting. So it's like they've basically released a proof of concept that if we poured the kind of money into AI development, if we poured that same kind of money into understanding LLMs, they've done a proof of concept that we might actually get there and understand how they work. And so this Golden Gate Bridge obsession is one of the results of like trying to control the features of the LLM. I think, if I understand correctly, is that right?
Yes. So what they were able to demonstrate with the Golden Gate Bridge, other than it's possible to be safe and have a lot of fun, which I didn't think was possible before, what they were also able to demonstrate was that they could steer the LLM. So you could take an LLM which was already trained, was already deployed, and you could knowingly manipulate it to bend it to your will. So obviously in this case it was to make it obsessed with the Golden Gate Bridge, but you could apply the same logic given enough time and money to, and I do think if I go back to, before where I was saying that we should have AI judges because at least you can make them better and they don't get old and whatever. So let's not go there. But at least if you find a problem in the system, they've demonstrated through proof of concept that it's possible to fix it like a bug almost in a piece of software. And that's a pretty good result. That's impressive research.
If we put the resources behind it, which will now be fascinating to see if we do, because if you look at, say, OpenAI and Microsoft, I find it really interesting that they're willing to put, what was it, 100 billion into their new data center to develop like even more powerful LLMs, and then they had a big announcement about like, their societal, I can't remember what they called it, their a special fund for trying to fight deepfakes, and it was like, they're putting like 1 million into it, which sounds like a lot if you don't compare it to like 100 billion for generating the actual thing that's going to create all the deepfakes. So it'll be interesting to see. I think Anthropic said it's just they've done this tiny portion of it because it was too expensive to continue. I imagine that the funding will come because they will obviously want to have better control over LLMs. However, if they can just continue being profitable without controlling it.
Yeah, I don't know that they're going to do anything about it. In fact, I mean, if you want to get very cynical, right, you can go and look at the DE&I, or you can look at the environmental impact statements that any large corporate puts out in their annual report, and then you can go and check that against the facts, and you might realize that it's all a load of rubbish. And they say that they're going to do the best thing, but all they care about is their shareholders at the end of the day. That's how capitalism works.
This is
it. And the other thing is, I think you really have to think about this as kind of like designing a jet engine or an airplane. You got to wait for it to crash before you figure it out. So we're at the
and this, folks, is why we call the show the AI Argument.
We're at the de Havilland Comet stage of development of the AI bots, right? And the AI machines, whereas they built what was clearly a modern jet-engined airplane, twin jet, beautiful plane, so it was, by the way, but it unfortunately had square windows, which led to metal fatigue, and then they tended to explode and it crashed. But they figured that out, and now we have safe jet travel as a result. And so, look, I guess what I'm trying to say in a slightly funny way is accidents. This is what happens. It's new technology. It's not going to be perfect. You can't sit around waiting for it to be perfect. You have to release it into the wild and then see what happens.
I think, I'm not 100% sure because I'm ingesting so much AI stuff right now, but I think it was in Mustafa Suleiman's TED Talk where he said, we cannot control what we do not understand. And now we have like a hint that, oh, look, we may actually be able to understand it. Therefore, we may actually be able to control it. And that's why I think personally, we don't wait for the crash. We follow the safest route that we have available to us, ideally.
Sure, but I was talking to somebody during the week, right? In every piece of every scientific endeavor that that we've put ourselves to, we've ended up being more efficient than what nature has done, right? So the amount of energy that it takes to fly a plane from here to Australia is probably less than the amount of energy that it would take if you were to walk there, right? If you were to figure it all out, right? I think it's more. I don't know if that's true, right?
I'll have to take your word for it. Yeah.
We'll just say that it is, right? I actually don't know. But typically, right, we make things more efficient, right? Or certainly we personally expend less energy in order to get something done. And it does strike me that one area of improvement for AIs is the amount of energy they consume in order to do the inferencing. I think that's something that will improve. There's all sorts of good incentives for the inferencing to get cheaper and more efficient. And I also think, right, I'm going back to the paper here. I also think that the best tool that you might be able to use to really understand the LLMs is the LLMs, right? So you can turn a very intelligent LLM on Claude Opus and tell it to do the interpret, and then you can probably reverse that study back. So if you understand the less capable model, you can use those learnings then to maybe understand the more capable model. And so using a GPT-5 type model to understand a GPT-4 type model, and then to use that information to control the GPT-5, I think that's possibly doable. That's a reasonable scientific approach. I wouldn't be slowing down. And neither are Microsoft and neither are OpenAI. It's not going to happen, Frank, anyway, right? You have Google going hell for leather. They've released another terrible product this week. You've got Microsoft going hell for leather. They've released their Microsoft recall, which, I mean, if the European Union got upset and made us put accept cookies and my fingers are slightly smaller from pressing accept cookies all the time, wait till they find out what that product does. And then you've got Meta going hell for leather. So you've got like this isn't going to slow down. Nobody's going to stop.
Yeah, Microsoft Recall is a really interesting one because Microsoft Recall is essentially a way for AI to be able to tell you anything you did on your computer for the past however long. However, it does that by taking a screen grab of your screen every 2 seconds and storing it locally. So, privacy experts are freaking out and going, well, this is a single point of entry for any scammer to get in and like just discover everything about you. And it doesn't encrypt the files and it doesn't obscure private information. Now, Microsoft are saying, yes, but you'd have to have physical access to the computer and you'd have to be able to log in and, you'd have to. But I mean, what they're saying doesn't even sound right to me. Are they really saying that that there is no chance that somebody would be able to remote access your machine and access that library of images?
Yeah, they're saying that, but I mean, I think history has shown that that's probably not true. There's always going to be a weakness somewhere, and the true weakness is you. The true weakness is social engineering normally to these things. So if you can access it, a hacker can find some way to get you to access it so they can access it too. It's not going to matter. It's not going to matter,
somebody from a scam support call saying, "Oh yes, I'll help you clear your browser cache," and then directing you to send them the files. I mean, So just to be clear, what are your thoughts on Microsoft Recall?
I think that's the most important piece of technology that we've seen this year. That's what I think about it. Important, influential, of greatest import. right? It is massive. It doesn't just capture your window, right? Now I didn't read this directly, but I'd be very surprised if it's not also capturing every screen click and every key press. I do know for a fact that it's also capturing your web browsing history, right? Now, if I want to automate Sharon from accounts, right, all I do is I give her a new Microsoft tablet that has Microsoft Copilot plus Recall on it. And that's going to be recording everything that Sharon does. It's going to look at all her emails. It's going to see how she reacts to all the emails. It's going to see what she does. When she gets an invoice, she opens it up, she reads the invoice. She then goes to the account system, she types it in. It has all of that information. And so when we started talking about this, 6 months ago or whatever, I mean, I think at the time I would have said to you, look, at Frank, I think in 10 years, we're all going to be automated out of a job. I fully believe that my last job is going to be to turn the lights off as I go out, right? I will automate myself out of a job. I have absolutely no illusions about that whatsoever.
Yeah.
And so while, I'm no Ray Kurzweil, right? I don't know exactly, I can't map it out for you, or I couldn't. Right, I could see the trajectory and going, okay, this is getting better. We're making agents. I can see that things are going to be automated, but it wasn't clear to me how exactly that would pan out. How would we do it? There seems to be a lot of work to automate everybody's job, including mine. A couple of things happened this week to make me think it wasn't so hard. That PC is one of them. That's how you automate every desk-based job. You just record what people do. That's it. And I mean, I was telling my kids this actually during the week, just to put them in a good humor, right?
So sorry, just to be clear though, your kind of hypothesis that first you record what they do and then you train an AI on what it is they've done over the last X number of months?
Yes.
Sure.
And you don't even train the AI, right? I can tell you, I've spent the last couple of weeks trying to Switcher.ie, any of these sort of price comparison websites, right? I hate every year having to search all the different websites and ring them up and get a better deal and all that sort of stuff, right? You do it every year. So I thought, well, it'd be great if I could get an AI agent to do that. So I've been trying, and that's totally doable. I did some tests, right, where I gave it gas bills and asked it to do analysis and all that sort of stuff. Brilliant, and all that sort of stuff. So now what I wanted to do is I wanted to log into my gas and electricity account, download the invoices, and then go and search the web for better deals. Actually, controlling the mouse and interacting with the websites is the hardest bit. All the clever stuff about seeing as the one deal better than another, that stuff's easy. It's the interacting with the websites is hard. And that's the bit, when I saw this, I was going, brilliant. Because all they're doing is they're using humans to train the AI how to interact with the computer. You do that for 12 months, and that's it. Sharon from accounts has been automated.
So despite the security and privacy concerns we discussed, you would forge ahead with this and put these computers in your organization?
If I owned the organization, I would have every employee that I had would have one of these computers on Monday morning. Every single one of them. I'd be a very happy captain. But it's true, right? And if I owned a factory,
I believe you. I believe you. You just we're back to holding the regular Fright and Frank Friday session. I'll tell you what.
Yeah, go on.
I think we should get on to the really important stuff.
Yes.
Should and did OpenAI's Skye voice sound like Scarlett Johansson? If
it didn't sound like Scarlett Johansson to everyone else, it sounded enough like Scarlett Johansson to me.
Will I play a clip?
Okay, let's do a judge. Let's do Judge Frank on this.
I've got 20 seconds here.
All right. Okay.
And it's intercut, and it's about 50% Skye. It's about 50% OpenAI Skye, and it's the other half then is Scarlett Johansson specifically from the movie Her, because I do think that it's specifically related to that movie that we're really talking about.
Yeah. Okay, let's go.
I'm doing great. Thanks for asking. How about you?
Yeah, there are some things. I'd say there are about 86 that we should save. We can delete the rest.
You're doing a live demo right now? That's awesome.
I can understand how the limited perspective of a non-artificial mind would perceive it that way.
Oh, a bedtime story about robots and love? I got you covered.
I think when you said that's Scarlett, I think that was actually Skye.
Actually, Frank, I'll be honest with you. I can't tell the difference.
Yeah,
I don't know which one
yeah,
is which. They sound identical to me.
yeah, yeah. I mean,
And
when you listen really closely, sure, they're not identical, but wow, they're. I mean, they are very similar, very similar. So,
Frank, who doesn't want Scarlett Johansson in their pocket? I
well,
mean, I think it's brilliant.
but
And
but it's not Scarlett Johansson. And what to make matters worse, not only is it not Scarlett Johansson, but Scarlett Johansson said, "No, I do not want to be in people's pockets."
she did. That was a
Now,
shame.
what is complicated, I think, about this is, I don't like interacting with technology by voice.
Mhm.
I like actually typing. I think we talked about this on a previous show that, like, yeah, I could understand if it's an autonomous robot that it would be handy to be able to just tell it to do stuff. But in terms of interacting with ChatGPT, I have no interest in interacting with voice. So I had never used the voice capabilities. So I actually
Yeah.
didn't realize when all this blew up, I didn't realize that Skye has been a voice in ChatGPT since like September.
Yes, that's right. And nobody complained.
Nobody complained. However, at the time, there were articles that compared the voice to Scarlett Johansson in the movie Her, and there was a lot of, for example, you can find like threads on Reddit at the time from lots of people saying, "Wow, I can't believe that's not Scarlett Johansson." So people noticed, but there was just no big brouhaha about it, and I think that's because it was the recent 4.0 demos that they all used the Skye voice. They all went viral because of the capabilities of the model. And then all of Scarlett Johansson's friends started saying, "Wait a minute, that sounds like you." And then she contacted OpenAI. And then the problematic bit is that, yes, they had contacted her and asked her, would she be the voice of Skye? And she said no. Problem is, according to OpenAI, they had hired the actress before asking Scarlett Johansson. So the timeline gets very muddy in terms of, like, did they actually do anything wrong? The agent for the voice actor says that there was no indication anywhere that they were looking for someone who sounded like Scarlett Johansson. So, the inference being that this is kind of a complete coincidence that they wanted a Scarlett Johansson type voice and they accidentally ended up with one. And then they asked Scarlett Johansson, would they replace that voice? So, did they do anything wrong? I mean, it looked like it initially, but then when you look at the timeline, it seems like maybe they didn't do anything wrong. However, it turns out, because I did a lot of reading on this because I got really fascinated by it. It turns out that they might still be in legal trouble
For what reason?
because so many people identify the voice as Scarlett Johansson, and she has a legal right to her likeness, even in her voice. So there have been two cases where, like, a company hired a Bette Midler sound-alike to do an ad, I think it was, and Frito-Lay hired a Tom Waits, someone who sounded like Tom Waits, to do an ad for them. The only difference here is that there was no, it's very hard to prove the intent that they were trying to sound like Scarlett Johansson. But apparently, legal experts are saying the intent may be irrelevant if enough people think that it's Scarlett Johansson.
I find that hard because you've basically outlawed everybody that sounds like Scarlett Johansson. I'm sorry, you sound like Scarlett Johansson. You can't, be a voice of anything, right? So
Yeah,
that
I
seems.
mean,
I think
it's
the fact that they called the voice Skye and not Samantha, that might be enough to get them out of trouble. Because if they called the voice Samantha, which is the voice from the film, then clearly it would have demonstrated that they were trying to ape the film. They were trying to copy the film. They just gave it a regular name and said, "There's a nice voice."
But then you have the tweet from Sam Altman who said her on launch day of 4.0. And you also have OpenAI developers in the kind of voice-to-voice department using screen grabs or using stills from the film Her as their Twitter social heading images. So, there was clearly a bit of a Her obsession going on in OpenAI, which doesn't help their case.
And I thought she was way too flirty. I mean, I said that last week. I thought that the voice was too flirty, way flirtier than it was in the movie. What amazes me most about this story is that there was a voice actor to do that voice. If you have a model that can create, I don't know if you played with 11 Labs. Have you played with 11 Labs?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Right,
They
brilliant. It's a
can't
brilliant
they can't
voice.
get my accent right though.
But it's a brilliant. But you can play with the voice, right? You can change the accent. You can, you can turn dials up and down. You can create
Yeah.
basically an entirely synthetic voice that's not anybody's voice. And so I'm surprised that they didn't just record Frank Prendergast and then just turn the voice to be female, do whatever, and switch the knobs, and then say, "Look, we didn't even." And maybe I wonder now, and I'm thinking out loud here. I wonder technically, it seems to me they could easily have done that, easily been okay, probably not correct, but they could do it. And by actually hiring an actress to do it, it gives them deniability to a certain extent to say, no, we didn't make this voice to be exactly the same as Scarlett Johansson. It just happens that we hired a voice actress that, lo and behold, sounded exactly like Scarlett Johansson. We're so sorry. We're so sorry. But I think this is an allegory for what's going to happen, right, to all of us, which is, it's kind of like Sharon from Accounts. Sharon from Accounts thinks that she's special, and Microsoft are going to record everything that Sharon from Accounts does. And Sharon, you're going to get a tap on the shoulder someday, and you're going to be an AI accountant. And Scarlett Johansson thinks that her voice is special, and this was the Sharon from Accounts moment for her, where it's not anybody's voice. You can find somebody that sounds exactly like somebody else, and that's it. We're all replaceable. I think it's time for a new social contract, to be honest with you, but we won't go there this week. But we have to understand that this is going to happen, and everybody from Scarlett Johansson to Sharon in Accounts is going to lose their job, and we should start planning for that.
I'm with you. And yeah, as you say, let's not dive into it too deeply, but I did see recently that so anyone who kind of is connected with me on LinkedIn or in the communities I'm in will know that I've been campaigning for a universal thriving income for humans, partly because I think the Elon Musk calls it a universal high income, but universal thriving income gives you the campaign slogan "Everyone deserves a UTI," which I think is much better. And Sam Altman came out recently and he said he could imagine a future where there was something slightly different, where everybody owned a piece of the compute of AI, and you could do whatever you liked with that compute. You could use it, you could trade it, you could, and I'm like, yeah, okay, that's great. I love the sound of that. Where's my slice? So Sam Altman, if you're listening, just message me, and I would love to take ownership of my slice of the compute at OpenAI now, to protect me for the future. So let's talk about...
I've cold hard cash, Frank, myself. I don't know. I heard him say that too. And I'm like, really? A piece of compute? It sounds like you're going to give me 3 free goes. And that's it. You're not going to get any more. I'm like, no, just give me the money. Give me the money, please.
Apparently, he does have an experiment that's been running for quite a long time on universal basic income, and the results are due to be discussed sometime soon. I'll be fascinated to hear about that. That will be really interesting.
I think that the hardest hit by this are the people who get hit first. And that's why I think it's important to think about it now. So if you were to move the dial forward, right, and say in 10 years, look, at most people are going to lose their job, right? If you keep your job until year 8, right, you've been through 8 years of this, it's obvious what's going to happen. So if you lose your job, right, you don't really care. You go, actually, it's pretty good. I'm looking forward to sitting back, and it's basically retirement. It's not losing your job. And so you're going to be okay with it. But if you're one of the people who lose your job in year 1, well, then you've got a pretty rough deal, right? Because it's not obvious what's going on here, right? You just happen to have lost your job because of AI, and that's already happening now. And I think you need a kind of very similar to you, yes, a thriving income, kind of like a COVID type response where, we're going to stand behind you. This thing is going to happen. Here's how it's going to roll. We're going to look after you. You're not going to be left out in the cold. This is what we're going to do. And you kind of have a discussion and say, look, in the future, robots are probably going to do all the work. They're going to do all the office-based jobs. They're going to work in all the factories. There are still going to be jobs if we want to work in places like healthcare facilities, or if you want to play sports, or if you want to, work with the elderly, or if you want to do all of these other types of jobs, or you can just do whatever you feel makes you the best person you can be. But you don't have to. It's going to be your choice. And we're going to support you, whatever your decision is. And interestingly, I think people of our age are going to find that very difficult to adjust to, because we're used to working and struggling in order to make ends meet. But I think, the kids of this, of today are going to look at us and think, you work 9 to 5, like 5 or 6 days a week. Are you nuts? Like, they'll be looking at us the same way that we look at people that worked down the mines 100 years ago, going,
Yeah.
Jesus, you guys were mad. Wow, that must have been really tough. And you got up at what time? Good Lord. Crazy.
Yeah.
We'll be sitting our grandchildren on our laps saying, oh, I remember when I was your age, I was already out working in the bank.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I sincerely hope you're right, but that it does, you're right. It requires us to look at the economic situation now and not wait until it's too late, essentially.
Yeah.
But so to close us out, let's talk about, is it Ursula?
Yeah, I do want to talk about Ursula, but just on Samantha, right? Did OpenAI break the law or did they not, Frank?
I think
where do you end on that?
Well, I'm less certain that they consciously set out to do something wrong. But I still think that their actions around the whole thing have all been a little bit suspect, a little bit weaselly. And I think that a court could easily rule in Scarlett Johansson's favor, whether or not you think that's right or wrong.
They might too. I think another lesson I don't disagree with any of that. I think something else you might draw from it is that this thing is so big and the flywheel is only just getting started. They're going to do what they're going to do. They don't care who you are. They don't care if you're Scarlett Johansson. They don't care if you're Sharon from accounts. They don't care whatever. They're going to do it anyway. So, I actually find it, because normally I'm like the let's go do it. To me, that's actually a caution. Even though I don't think they did anything wrong, I think there is a pause for caution. And it's my usual thing, which this is AI isn't going to do us in. It's a person using AI is going to do us in. And so the thing that I would worry about out of that whole story is Sam Altman must be an incredibly busy man, right? I'm pretty stressed at work. You're pretty stressed at work. He's in the process of, developing trillions of dollars and deploying trillions of dollars. He's got a number of ventures on the go. It's the most impactful and important technology of, possibly ever. And he's got a lot of decisions to make. And one, it's hard to make that number of decisions and make the right decisions, so you can make mistakes. And two, I also think, absolute power corrupts absolutely. And there is an element of absolute power if if he can see into the future. Say he's seen GPT-5 and GPT-6 and he knows exactly where it's going. He's a little bit of Caesar about it, and so we should all be a little bit careful, not of the AI, but of the person that controls the AI. And that's where your checks and balances maybe should come in.
Yeah. So speaking of checks and balances, Ursula and what checks and balances may exist there. So Ursula, for anyone who hasn't come across it, because I certainly hadn't until you mentioned it to me, it's an app for kids. They're basically saying no child will ever have to be lonely again. So it's like an empathetic character. It's a little bit like Pi for kids. So it chats to kids. It chats through problems with them. It's a kind of an AI companion for kids. What do you make of it?
I think this is the worst idea I've ever heard. I think it should be banned immediately. I think this is like me saying, here, I've made this new Coke and I've added extra cocaine to it so kids like it even more, right? And then you're going down, you're selling it in the high street stops. I have never seen anything more dangerous. I was really concerned. I was reading through the blurb of the founders, and I hate, I've been a founder myself. I hate dumping on people, right? They put a lot of effort and work into it. But they're boasting about the engagement numbers and the retention numbers and how kids are really drawn to this. Mm-hmm. And I'm just like, in the coming years, we want to encourage kids to interact with each other more and more. That's going to be what's really important. So they're going to interact with this technology anyway when they become adults. This is worse than McDonald's advertising to kids. It's worse than, morning TV programs advertising to kids. It's a really dangerous road to go down. And I think it's so important, right? The technology is moving so fast, right? So fast. As you say, you become overwhelmed. just by all the news that's coming. And legislators are also going to be overwhelmed. And there's a danger, right, that they'll try and do a sledgehammer approach, and they'll kill it, right? And that's what Europe appears to have done. And instead, they need a whack-a-mole approach, which is you wait for an issue, and this is definitely an issue. And as soon as you see it, you shouldn't be waiting. You should ban it straight away. It should be instant. It should be within a week or two. That thing's banned. Not with the kids. No, the kids have to learn to interact with humans when they become 18. Because they'll have it with, you saw, the Khan Academy, and they were showing how they could be great tutors and all this sort of stuff. The kids are going to interact with this technology in, all sorts of ways that are beneficial for education and stuff. And I'm okay with that. But as a friendship tool, no, it's there, right? It's a terrible thing, right? It's saying that, no kid need be lonely again. Well, this guarantees that the kid is going to be lonely at some point in the future, because it's going to stop the kid from having real friendships with other people that they should be outside playing with. I was really upset when I saw this. I think it's totally wrong. And I hope whoever thought it was a good idea maybe sees that it's not such a good idea. There's loads of opportunity, but this isn't it. There you go. Have my rant.
Yeah, no, that's fascinating. It's fascinating because I'm not sure I would have expected that you would be so anti it. I have very complex feelings about it. I was very kind of like, ooh, I don't know how I feel about this. That was basically my initial reaction. I think ultimately I'm like, well, it seems dangerous because we just don't know what the impact on a developing mind will be. And have we learned nothing from like social media? But you know what? That whole thing of like, we don't know what the impact will be. That's kind of how I feel about AI for everyone. So it's interesting to me that you see it very black and white for kids, but you're much more gung-ho for the rest of us.
Yeah, because I plan to take an awful lot of time off once this thing gets rolled out and spend time with my kids. And if they're off on another AI playing around on their phones, well, then I can't spend time with them. So that's no good. So
I love it.
We all need two winners.
That's a great perspective to end on today, I reckon.
Brilliant.
Cool.
Frank, it's been a pleasure as always.
Absolutely.
God only knows what the next 7 days brings.
I genuinely thought after last week we'd have a quiet week this week, and then the amount of things that caught my attention was just phenomenal. So I look forward to next week. I'll chat to you soon.
Frank, pleasure as always. Talk soon.